The crypto altcoin tier list. My opinion on the best and worst cryptocurrencies that are either the most popular or the most talked about, but ideally, these are ones that I particularly like or are currently invested in. This should hopefully answer a lot of questions surrounding, hey, Kyron talks about this, Kyron talks about that, but which one does he actually prefer? So today, it's going to be my honest, no BS opinion on which is better. But ultimately, guys, if you do want to see more, I can possibly look at making these videos every single month. So, of course, let me know down below if you'd like to see that. So allow me to say for the record, I am doming this off the top of my head. So don't crucify me below if I say something that's not exactly 100% accurate. I'm literally going to go off what I currently know on each of these projects. And ultimately, guys, I'm going to have no filter here. I'm literally going to rank them and what I exactly think about it. I know it's going to disappoint a lot of you and it might actually give you some criticism points, but ultimately this is my just honest opinion. So let's just go alphabetical order. What do I think about Cardano ADA? Well, I actually really do like Charles Hoskinson. I think Cardano is a very promising project. I do have some reservations into them actually becoming a sort of competitor in this new ISO 20022 world, because general purpose blockchains, I believe, are going to be very limited to probably one or two. Maybe Cardano is one of those projects, but I think it really does or should be looking at fitting into a specific niche. And I know they have a pretty good firm grasp of Africa, at least they want to. So I think let's just start off right now with putting them in a B. I feel pretty comfortable with that. Now, Algorand is one of my favorite projects. Again, another leader in the space. Silvio Macali is someone I look up to. I couldn't get enough of this guy. Look, the man's a smart guy. He invented zero-knowledge proofs. He obviously knows what he's doing. He invented VRS, for God's sake, which is like one of the most used parts of cryptography. Any sort of blockchain uses nowadays verifiable random functions. So again, we're looking at the team. Team is what steers the ship. And so I not only love that, but I did a recent dive on HBAR versus Algorand, and I come to realize that they have a really good enterprise solutions, and they're very, very adaptable ultimately. So I feel comfortable putting them in an A, to be honest. API 3, I haven't talked about these guys for quite a while. I think they're obviously a competitor to Chainlink. I do think Chainlink has the most of the market share, but these guys have a really unique node system that allows them to pretty much be a bit like Quant, right? Through APIs, they can pretty much extract data from any sort of website, and it's not third-party based, it's all first-party based, so it's from the actual website or data source themselves. So yeah, I actually am a little bit bullish on these guys, but I think they are competing or at least fighting an uphill battle against Chainlink. So look, I'm going to put them in a C category for now, but we'll see how things progress. So next up, we have Arbitrum. Now, what do I think of Arbitrum? Well, it's slightly concerning that they only have one node. Now, I understand the consensus or at least a scaling solution. The optimistic rollup requires pretty much very centralized amount of nodes. And in this case, it's obviously one node, but I'm mainly concerned because settlement, aka finality, happens after sometimes even weeks. So for me, I'm not a massive bull. I know a lot of you guys are going to disagree with me. I just don't really feel like it's an investment for me. Again, I like to look at utility tokens. And honestly, I think Polygon has a lot more going on than Arbitrum does, even though obviously it's a higher market cap. I'd rather honestly bet more on that. So in this case, I'm going to actually put Arbitrum at a D. Now, next we have Cosmos. And I think Cosmos is a fantastic network. I am actually still dollar cost averaging on a weekly basis into this bad boy because I do believe in it for the long term. I do think there is limitations, specifically with the IBC, and if any networks want to actually be connected to RBC, they have to have fast consensus and finality, which pretty much means they have to use the Cosmos SDK, which leverages a type of mechanism that pretty much limits the amount of nodes again to about 100 or so, which is like Tendermint, right? So I do have lots of potential, lots of expectations for Cosmos. I'm leaning towards a B to a C, and I do feel more comfortable probably putting them into a B because I do feel like there is a lot of potential there. Next is AVAX. So AVAX is one I've done an article for before. I've written up a pretty decent long bit on this guy, and I actually think there's a lot of potential for it because they have some really big partners. They're partnered with like Alibaba. They're partnered with a lot of big named enterprise multinational companies. Okay, and even some investment banks I think actually have. One of the largest investment banks has some funds, like multi-billion-dollar funds, actually tokenized right now on Avalanche. So yeah, I think there's a lot of room for it. Am I personally invested in Avalanche? No. I'm going to put it at a C because ultimately, as I do think there's lots of potential, it's just not an investment for me right now. Next is BNB Chain. Guys, I don't know if a lot of you actually like BNB Chain or not. I think it's like a breeding hub for like meme coins and shit coins. To me, that never really screamed wow. I guess, you know, low TPS and stuff like that and fast finality, but hey, any network can pretty much get to that nowadays with a low number of nodes. So I think it's a cesspit. If I'm going to be completely honest, I'm actually going to give it an F. Now, Bitcoin SV. This is a project I'm going to get a lot of flack for. I have spoken with a prominent person in the BSV space, Kurt Workett Jr., and he opened my eyes up to what they're actually doing here. And I actually believe in the project, and I think that they're highly, I guess, misinterpreted, because they're really looking towards like an alternative to Bitcoin Cash and the current Bitcoin, where it's like small blocks matter, where these guys want to look at bigger blocks. Now, I do think there is a lot of downsides to the network, and it is quite centralized, I do believe. So I'm going to put them into the C category here. Now, what do I think of Bitcoin? Again, this is one I think a lot of people might disagree with me on. You might find 90% of YouTubers throwing them up in the S tier. Matter of fact, I think 99% of YouTubers throwing them up here. What do I actually think? Well, I'm going to put them in the A category next to Algorand, because again, I'm a utility fiend, right? I like to see projects that are ISO 222 compliant, or if I'm going to be exact, that can actually replace real Web 2 solutions. And I actually really don't like how Bitcoin has progressed, specifically talking on the back of Bitcoin SV, because ultimately the Bitcoin devs have transferred it from the initial vision of Satoshi Nakamoto being a peer-to-peer electronic cash system to now like this digital gold sort of hypothesis that everyone keeps saying it is. So in my opinion, yeah, it's not S tier. So what about Casper Network? Again, these guys are focusing heavily on the enterprise grade sector. Are they doing an adequate job right now? No, they're very young. They're pretty much just like where Ethereum wants to be in the 2025 plus, or even further. Ethereum's very slow at their developments, of course. So Casper is a scalable, infinitely scalable network that has sharding, of course. It's very fast, but it lacks an ecosystem right now, and they're trying to focus on that. So I think I have to give them some credit, but ultimately it is right in my wheelhouse. So right now I will give them a B. Now, Dogecoin, I just threw Dogecoin in here because I just thought to myself, people need to know. People need to know that I hate meme coins, but that's neither here nor there. I think this is what's holding crypto back. And, I hear it so many times. People in the space say, hey, mass adoption. We need mass adoption to, do whatever. Forget about it, because those are the type of people that buy meme coins and say, I just made a quick profit on the meme coin. Cool. If you can make money on meme coins, all the power to you. But I don't want to hear in your same breath saying that you should look at mass adoption. These are gambling coins. These are casinos on, digital casinos ultimately, right? So F tier, period. Allow me to interrupt this program very briefly. If you are enjoying this video, I would applaud you to please hit the like button. And if you really feel like it, hitting subscribe for more of this type of content. A lot of work goes into these videos, and I would really appreciate. All right, back to the video. Polkadot. You guys know I'm a big Polkadot fan, right? What do I think about this bad boy? Well, I do think there's some room to grow here. I think Polkadot is a longer term play than 2025. I think it's a 2025 to 2029 play, because the parachains need to be in full force, aka all 100, plus probably run through one or two epochs, if you will, of that whole entire 100 parachains auctions for it to, I believe, be the cream of the crop on the network itself and be running, okay? So I'm actually going to put them in the B tier for now, all right? Because again, it's a longer term play, even though I hold a lot of DOT, right? Now, MultiverseX. This is an interesting one because I feel like MultiverseX is highly underrated. Their ecosystem, while it isn't amazing by any stretch of the imagination, I think the applications on it are amazing individually, and I think there's a lot of room to grow. Now, honestly, I feel like, and I know a lot of you guys agree with me here, that them rebranding to MultiverseX might actually play a big reason as to why they don't get adopted as much as what they would like to, because if the multiverse doesn't prosper, right, and I think that's a big indication with how Meta actually, Facebook actually went with pretty much abandoning it. I think if the whole multiverse narrative dies, it's going to play a very bad impact on the, investment opportunities in MultiverseX. Again, I'm going to give them a B, I think, okay? I still love the project itself, and they have great tokenomics. So Ethereum, what do I think about ETH? Well, we talk about general purpose blockchains. I think ETH is obviously first mover advantage. I love where they're going with things. and I think that they will be a general purpose blockchain for a very long time. I'm going to give them the S tier here. Filecoin, I haven't done a lot of research on Filecoin as much as I like to in other networks. So, and when I say lots of research, I mean like really get into the tech. You guys know I don't like talking about stuff unless I know a lot about it. So, but from what I know about Filecoin, I do think it has its place. I think it's a great network and there's a lot of room to grow. So I'm going to give them a B as well. Okay. All right. Let's talk a little bit about decentralized computing. Flux. Where do I think Flux will be? Well, I really love Flux because ultimately they essentially use every single bit of the network at every single level. For example, the miners, through proof of useful work, all the computation that would have been wasted through mining is actually now can be repurposed towards rendering things like, for scientists or graphics and things like that. So that's obviously in combination with their node network that supplies a decentralized computational cloud. So I love these guys. I think Dan the man, the founder of Flux, is a brilliant guy himself. So I'm actually going to put this in the A tier category. Gala Games, again, I actually talk about Gala Games a fair bit on this channel. I think it is a fantastic hedge into gaming, specifically because these guys are looking to become a foothold, not just in obviously crypto, but Web 2, and also they're looking at Gala Films and Gala Music. I don't have too much faith in that, to be honest with you, but I do think that their Gala Games niche is quite good and we'll see some good returns. So I feel like I'm going to give them a B. I just feel like that's naturally where I feel they belong. So Moonbeam, again, another project I talk about quite heavily on this channel and have interviewed Derek, the founder, as well. I believe they are fantastic Web 3 based solution right now, not Web 2, so they're no like sort of quant network, but I do think that they have lots of room to grow. So I am going to give them, I feel, like another B. Well, the B's filling up quite quickly here, but I definitely think a lot of these projects do definitely fit in that category. All right, here's my number one holding. You guys have been probably waiting for it. Hedera Hashgraph. Well, I'm going to waste no time. I think they're an S tier. I love Lehman Bard. I love the Hashgraph. And the reason why I love Hedera so much, besides from all the partnerships and the governing council and how they've structured the network so uniquely, which I think alone pretty much gives it an S tier, I do think that the Hashgraph itself, because it is one of a kind, is a point of difference. I compared Algorand and Hedera the other day and said, ultimately, Algorand won the sort of like which network I would choose. But the reason why I'm giving Hedera an S is because I feel like more networks will want to use the Hashgraph because it is unique and offers more flexibility than Algorand, or at least other networks, okay? Because again, it's one of a kind. Now, ICP, I actually haven't done a review, but I am doing research in the background because it's such a large project on ICP. I do think that these guys can truly change the world and make a massive impact. I am putting them in the S tier. And as a matter of fact, the founder as well is a really smart guy. So IOTA. Now, IOTA isn't one I've spoken about much either, and quite centralized, but I think they fit perfectly in like the IoT space. And ultimately, they're going to be like pretty much well required moving into the future. I think everything nowadays is going to have like a supply chain use case, and people are going to want to know where their materials or where their product has been sourced from, and whether it's actually like if it's food, what the temperature of the casket is. I think this is where the world is gravitating to. So I'm going to give them an A. Okay. Now Kadena. Now I've got my woes with Kadena, and I think that the team is, specifically the two founders, are working really well on, fixing some of the things that I mentioned. Not that they watched my video, of course, but that, they are working on those weak points, and specifically with the Curo Layer 2 network, and how, while the main network might be infinitely scalable, I do think there is limitations there as well. So I still think in my heart of hearts that Kadena sits in the D for me, simply because I just wouldn't want to invest in them, at least right now. So what about kusama, the sister net of Polkadot? Well, again, great for tokenomics. I think these guys are more focused towards the gaming metaverse thing side of life, rather than Polkadot focused on more like the traditional Web3 based things, DeFi and stuff like that. But I think that these guys deserve a C because they will provide lots of returns in the upcoming bull markets. Now, Chainlink. I'm not going to waste any time with this. Chainlink's an S tier. Why? Well, because Chainlink is so deeply embedded within the whole entire space, it's impossible to extract these guys. They're also working on an upgrade called 𝗡cie, which is going to allow them to pretty much be like a quant of Web3, almost like a competitor to the TCP/IP, or the current internet protocol we use and can build websites and stuff on right now, but for crypto, right? Where you can interoperate very seamlessly, adapts to dApps through different networks, okay? So they have a lot going for them. They will never be outcompeted, at least for a very long time, and they have the market, the market share. They have the monopoly right now. And let's talk about another Web 2, layer 2 solution. So look, I actually quite like Polygon, and it's such a large market cap right now. I do think that is a little bit of a hesitant thing for me, but they are just like Chainlink. They are cut above the rest. They're doing so much, and they have so many massive brands behind them. I think it's like impossible to rate them any lower than an A. I think the reason why it's not an S is because I do think there is still room for Arbitrum and Optimism to come in, or a different layer 2 solution in future. And specifically because I think Ethereum, the way it's going, can eventually abolish layer 2 solutions. Not to say that it will, but I think the Ethereum network itself, with their sort of sharding approach, I think that eventually there's going to be alternatives to Polygon, which will diminish its, monopoly, if you will. Next, we have Mina, 2 actually privacy networks coming up here. I definitely think Mina has a lot going for it as well. I'm comfortable, just because we're running out of time here, not to talk too much about it. I think their Oracle solution is awesome. Very ZK based, 22 kilobyte blockchain size. I'm going to put them as well in the A tier list. I hold many, many bags of Mina, and I think that they're a great hedge into 2025 and also beyond, okay? Now, Oasis, these guys also work on zero-knowledge proofs. These guys are also privacy-based, but they're more enterprise-grade privacy-based. They're looking at integrating specifically with businesses in a very unique way that Mina probably can't, at least right now, okay? So, more flexibility. I do think Oasis right now isn't an investment for me because I'm strictly more hedging into Mina, but I think in terms of rating them quite fairly, they're a B as well. I'm just trying to be as fair as possible here, even though I'm not currently, invested in them. So what about Quant? All right, you guys know, again, I'm not going to waste any time with Quant Network. Interoperating the world, Web 2, Web 3, anything, any siloed network, existing network, whatever it may be, private server, I don't care what it is, Quant can do it. Plus, they're also working potentially with the Bank of England, and more specifically the BIS, or Bank of International Settlements, where they could actually have integrated themselves, the overledger, into whole economies. So, and low supply too. Now, Render, a sort of competitor, if you will, to Flux, but they're not really competing with Flux. Flux is pretty much doing everything. Render is more specifically doing like rendering of, what I was talking about earlier, right? The proof of useful work for Flux, where it's like provide computational resources specifically for rendering and scientific resources, rendering images, right? And I think that moving into the future, where graphics cards are going to be harder to come by, and as resources begin to dwindle down, these guys will take off more and more and more. I'm going to give these guys an A, right next to Flux, okay? Actually, now that I think about it, they're not doing as much as Flux, but I do think that I've heard a possible, shout out to Kobe, he mentioned they possibly could be working with a big name coming up. I don't want to mention it just yet, just in case it isn't actually confirmed, but yeah, so I'm thinking out loud almost, guys, but I definitely want to situate them in the A category. Now, Reserve Rights, pretty much a place where you can tokenize assets, and they're very heavily connected in the back end with Stellar, where you can pretty much create an asset from any sort of basket of assets. So I could just, as long as it's tokenized, right, I could have any sort of fiat currency as long as it's tokenized, and create a basket of a stable coin. So I could have like, if I'm talking about Australian dollars, it might be KUSD, like Chiron USD, for example, or like, any different sort of variation of a fiat currency, and then use that to support, a whole entire new asset, which I can call whatever, right? Called R tokens, okay? So you can do this with anything, right? You can also do this with, so any sort of like, you can make a managed fund, if you will, from like an ETF, right? Where it's like, you can get any sort of basket like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Casper, BSV. As long as they're on the internet and tokenized, you can actually create it and then have like one token representing all of those assets, right? So you're pretty much just like creating a managed fund, if you will. So I'm going to put these guys in the A category list because they're actually making some big plays right now with Venezuela and these countries that actually need to have a very stable cryptocurrency, right? Now, I recently tested when the recent market downturn happened, and the protocol is working as intended to. So it's great to see it's actually working. Solana, again, we're running out of time here, guys. So I'm just going to pretty much say I don't really believe in Solana that much. I'm going to put them in the D category. They'll have to do a lot to convince me to want to invest in them. Next is Uniswap. I thought I'd throw a DeFi play in here. DeFi isn't obviously as large as what it once was back in DeFi summer, but ultimately I think that these guys are integrating themselves across the whole entire space. A lot of different networks or other DeFi platforms have forked themselves from the Uniswap code. So I do think that these guys will be a large player. Do I think forever? Probably not. So I'm currently not invested in Uniswap. So I'm going to give them a D as well. Last three, guys, let's look at XDC Network. Now, I don't want to waste any time. I'm actually going to put these guys in the A category. And the reason being is because they are making some massive strides in the TradeFi world, but I do think that there is still a large way to go, and these guys won't really take off, just like some of the other projects, I must admit, into 2025. So specifically, their niche will require a lot more regulation and clarity around specifically using contracts, and specifically because they have enforceable smart contracts that will need to comply with different sort of legislations and stuff like that. Okay, so I am still invested in these guys. They do have lots of potential. So what about Stellar? I do think Stellar, again, is one I'm invested in and have been investing in for quite a while now. And I do think they're going to be sort of dependent on XDC as well, XRP rather, to see how they sort of prosper in the future. Lots of controversy around both these projects in terms of how implemented they really might be. But just like XRP, I think they do have lots of potential if they are integrated as intended to be. Lots of big name partners. I'm going to give them an A. And finally, XRP. What do I think these guys are? Well, I don't own any XRP, and it's quite funny because I do think that Stellar will be integrated a lot better into the world and be required more, because I think XRP, there's a lot of controversy around sort of multiple tokens in the back end, and obviously banks not actually using the tech. So I'm a little bit wary on XRP right now. I do love it, don't get me wrong, but we'll have to see how they progress. Right now, I'm going to give them a B. And with that said, that's my list, guys. Now, obviously, I only pretty much covered about 30-odd projects here, so I try to get through them as fast as possible. I was doming it completely, but I definitely feel like what I've given them in this case is actually what I feel about the projects. So with that said, I actually wouldn't mind doing this on a monthly basis, because ultimately I can give you guys more frequent updates on how these projects are progressing, rather than just going off how I feel in my existing knowledge. I can do a little bit more research into how they are progressing. Obviously, I'm not going to look at doing all of these every single time, but a select few, at least the ones I've covered in that prior month. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate it. If you have stuck through right to this point, if you don't mind, hit the like button. And if you really have enjoyed my content, hit subscribe to see more of it. All right, guys, thanks so much. Talk to you soon.